This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, show 24.
Welcome to We the SEs Podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba. At one point, Ramsey went down to 205 pounds, believe it or not. It was actually easier to find Waldo. Hope you enjoy the show.
Hello, SE Nation. I have a great show for you today, and I know all of my shows are amazing, but this one I really enjoyed. Today I'm talking with Iannarino. He will introduce himself at the start of the interview so you can get a better view of what he does. But it really doesn't matter what he does. It's the thought process and the ideas that he provides. Lots of information today, lots of tips, lots of tricks. Like it was great. And I felt like it was talking to me and about me a lot of the time. So I enjoyed that and gave me a little bit of an idea, little ideas of what to do. And so listen to the show, and at the end there's a surprise. So listen all the way through, and at the outro there's a surprise for you guys. So without further ado, let's get into the show.
Okay.
Hey Anthony, how's it going?
Wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining me on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, it is my pleasure, and I want to point out that you're kind of the first of 3 people to follow me on Twitter. So I appreciate it. And that's how I actually got to know you. I was talking to my brother-in-law who's also in sales, and he was amazed that you're actually following me. So thank you for following me.
Now you got a verified person following you, so your brother can be jealous.
Oh, he already is for other reasons, but yeah. Awesome. Well,
Spoken like a brother.
Yeah, well, he's my brother-in-law, so it's
your
even
brother-in-law,
worse.
yeah, for sure.
All right, great. Maybe you can take a second to introduce yourself, who you are, and what you do.
Okay, that's hard for me to do. My name's Anthony Iannarino. I'm a speaker, an author, a writer, an entrepreneur, a coach, a consultant, and all kinds of other things. Where most people know me from is my blog, thesalesblog.com, where I publish daily, or youtube.com/Iannarino, where I've got 350 or 400 videos, and my podcast, In the Arena.
What's your podcast called? Iannarino?
It's called In the Arena.
In the Arena, okay. Well, nice. And you talk about, what are the subjects you talk about in your podcast?
In the podcast, it is predominantly sales, but because it's sales, it tends to cause a lot of conversation around success and management and leadership and a lot of mindset. So it tends to span those sort of topics. So sales, success, management, leadership, and a lot of things about how you become, successful and do meaningful, purposeful work.
Okay. And were you in sales? You're obviously still in sales right now because you have to sell what you do to your customers. But what were you doing before you started this consulting?
I've always been in sales. I didn't remember this until recently. One of my first jobs, I was cold calling when I was like 15 years old for the Muscular Dystrophy Association, setting up bike-a-thons. But my primary time was spent selling temporary staffing, which I started to do when I was, 19 or something like that. And I did that for, plus or minus 30 years. So I sold staffing, which is an intangible and a service. One of the more difficult things you can sell because of how commoditized it is.
Yeah, and from what I've noticed, it's kind of the same as we're going right now to the cloud. Everything's in the cloud. Everything's not tangible. You're not buying a physical device. So yeah, it's getting harder to sell that because people don't see it.
It's true.
So we talked about this a little bit before, like last week when we first connected. This podcast is geared towards sales engineers, right? And you work with a lot of sales organizations, sales people, and they probably have their own sales engineers who they work with. Is that somewhat accurate?
That's sometimes true.
Okay, so what's your definition of a sales engineer? Maybe we can start there.
It's an interesting concept. So what it tends to be, in my view, is what I would call a SME, or a subject matter expert in the technological parts of a sale. That's what it tends to be. So it's for the technology parts of the product offering, the solution, and sometimes the sales process itself. So it's people that are going to work with the sales team to sort of do the more technical advice. How close does that match with what you think it is?
That's exactly what it is. So
Okay, yeah. So I know there's other people who think it's more of like a pre-sales kind of role or something like that. But I don't. In my experience, it tends to go all the way in, and the more the solution requires a technological solution where there's more technical details to discuss, the more that tends to be true. I think the more it tends to be, you need an engineer to help you with that.
Well, so from my experience, it could be both. A pre-sales engineer is a sales engineer who focuses only on like the selling part, right? But they have to do the technical aspects in terms of demos and evaluations and working with them. And from what I've seen, successful pre-sales engineers always end up doing work after they sell the product just to make sure that the customer is happy.
Yeah, and I think also, questions tend to come up later in the sales cycle that end up being technical, and so you need a technical person to be able to answer them.
Yep, exactly. Actually, most of the questions that come up after the sales cycle are about implementation versus because they already paid for stuff. All right, so in your experience, generally speaking, we have an SE working with account manager or managers. How do you see SEs and account managers working together to actually sell?
Poorly. If I had to give it a word, I would say they work together poorly. And I think it's because what I see is that a lot of people who would be an account executive role or an account manager role tend to rely too heavily on a subject matter expert and a technical person too early in the sales process. So they bring them on qualifying calls because they hope that that person can start talking to someone about a solution that they want to sell. And people don't really care about our solutions. And there's a marketing professor from Harvard in the 60s named Theodore Levitt that said people don't want to buy drills, they want to buy quarter-inch holes. And if they could have the hole without having the drill, they would just have the hole. And so I think when you rely on the product and the technology to do all the selling for you, you massively misunderstand what selling is today, because selling is about helping people achieve the outcome or the hole, the quarter-inch hole, and not the drill. And what a salesperson should do before they start getting into a technical conversation is help to explain and understand what the client's strategic outcome is, so that every conversation after that is about how do we get them what they really want, because they really don't want our technology. They want the outcome of the technology, whatever that is. And let me say another word about that, and I'll try to make this clear. Like, you sell something that I need to put into my product. I already have something that works in my product, but buying it from you is going to allow me to acquire larger, more strategic clients that's going to grow my business. I'm doing this because I want to grow my business, not because I want to buy technology. And so the salesperson that relies on a subject matter expert and a technical expert to try to position what they're selling prematurely, early in the process, is missing the first part of the conversation, which is why change, and how to change, and what change looks like, and how you're going to implement that comes after the first conversation is why should I do anything different than I'm doing now? And I think that that's the mistake that they make. And then they rely for too long on a technical person. And the other thing I would tell you is that as smart as SMEs are, they tend to have their shtick. So they tend to have a set of questions that they ask, tend to have a set number of statements that they want to make about how we do things. And I think a salesperson should be a 52% subject matter expert on their own right, and just say, I'm good up to this point. And now when we get really nerdy and it's going to get super technical, I'm going to bring my best technical people to that problem. And I think that they undervalue a technical person through the process and overvalue them early in the process. So that's my particular view of this.
That's great. Lots of questions coming up. So maybe I can start with, why aren't account managers aware that that's what they're doing?
Most salespeople want to try to make sales as easy as possible. And doing that, what they try to do is try to say, well, if they can see this and they like it, then it's going to be something that attracts them to buy this. And I always tell people the same thing. Whenever I walk into a building, I never have to try to force my way through, the massive throng of people waiting to try to get in to buy from that company. And it's because the product, as good as it is and as compelling as it is, it doesn't cause the why change, but we want it to be the why change. We want our company's history to be the why change. We want the product to be the why change. We want our logos that we've captured in the past to be the why change. Everything except for I know how to help you get the strategic outcomes, because to do that, I'm now the value prop, and I would rather have the product be the value prop, or our experience be the value prop, or our company be the value prop. So we're trying to make selling easy, and you probably know this because you look like a fit guy. The when you try to make something easy, you make it difficult, and when you try to make something difficult, you make it easy. So if you want to get fit, and you decide the best thing that I can do is I'll stop eating until I lose the weight I want. You've tried to make it easy, and by doing it, you've made it impossibly difficult. But if you say, I'm going to make it as difficult as possible, and I'm going to decide to eat only these few things and get a half hour of exercise every morning, mostly cardio, then you end up having it be very easy for you to get the outcome that you want. But for salespeople, we're trying to find the easy way, and the hard way is the easy way, and the easy way is the hard way.
Okay. So how do we get around that? How I'm a sales engineer, and by definition, if you think about the hierarchy of the sales team, the salesperson is the leader of that team. I'm kind of the guy who does everything that the leader doesn't want to do, right? So how? Go ahead.
You're going into a different subject here on what leadership is,
Well,
and you're talking about formal organizational hierarchical leadership. You're not talking about leadership.
Well, what I'm trying to get to is, as an SE, how can I get my sales guy to realize? And I'm just giving an example. I'm not talking about my sales guy, but a sales guy to realize.
He's going to listen to this. He's listening right now. You're in deep trouble.
He's not listening. He doesn't even know that I'm doing this. I've said it a few times, but he doesn't know.
I'm just teasing you.
Yeah, no, it's all good. He's a good guy, and I know where he lives. So how can I get him to realize that, hey, maybe we're not going about this the right way?
And of course you are, because he wants to get you in a demo as fast as possible. Let's show him this so that we can entice him into buy. I mean, the thing that you have to say is, listen, I've been thinking a lot about our approach, and I wonder if we couldn't ask them some questions about the strategic outcomes and share with them some of the strategic outcomes we're helping other people get before we show them a demo, so that we can give them a much better view of this. And if it doesn't happen for you, the thing that you brought up that's interesting to me is leadership. And leadership is very, very simple to define. To be a leader, you have to lead. That's what a leader does. So you can find, if you search Google and you just search, what does a leader do? You're going to find 64 million different ideas. Oh, they have vision. Oh, they grow other people. Oh, they execute. They have all these other things. It's all of those things. But essentially what it boils down to is, who's going to actually lead? And that's the most important thing. So in your role, what you could do is to say, listen, before we start this demo, I'd like to ask you, as you're considering this, what kind of strategic outcomes are you hoping that we can achieve for you? And when you ask that question, you've just now taken the leadership role to say, I've decided that the most important thing for us to do is to create the greatest outcome for the client. And to do that, it means that I have to skip wanting to go to the demo right now and ask a more difficult and a challenging question that gives me greater insight. But you can make that decision with or without your sales rep or your account manager. By just asking that single question, it allows you to open up that conversation and say, we're going to start at a different place. And ultimately, the success in sales for most of us comes from starting at that different place and not selling like it's 1974 anymore.
Yeah, so that's happened actually. I think it's happened with every sales team where one of them has to ask that question. But to me specifically, it's happened where with my previous account manager, he was in a meeting and then he walked out and I bumped into him. He's like, oh, good news. Tomorrow we're demoing X.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? What do they want to see? Oh, they just want to see it. Like, there has to be a bigger reason than they just want to see it.
That's exactly right. So we're back to, they want to buy a drill.
Yeah.
Well, why do they want to buy a drill? what size hole do they need? Why are they drilling a hole in the first place? Let's try to understand what they're doing, because that's going to shape what we show and how we talk about something.
Okay. So you mentioned that the account teams, the sales engineers, the account managers start poorly, and the SMEs have their own shtick. Do you mind clarifying by what you mean by that?
Yeah, you have your own shtick, and what I mean by that is that you have a certain set of questions that you ask over and over again. You have a certain number of statements that you want to make over and over again because you found them to be helpful or useful, and so you come in and you tend to ask the same first 4 or 5 questions. And so I always wonder in a qualifying call why the salesperson hasn't just learned what your first 4 or 5 questions are, and why do they need you before it even gets technical. Because I'm back to the central premise that we're talking about here today, is they're not trying to buy a drill, they're trying to buy holes. So I would rather talk about the holes first, and then when it's like, well, tell me about this drill. Okay, now I'm going to bring in a technical person to have that part of the conversation, because uh, they're going to better understand the drill or the technical solution in this case. And I don't know why a rep thinks that they can't learn those first and second level questions, which tend not to be all that technical to begin with. It tends to get deeper as you get more sophisticated with the solution and deeper into the conversation. And I don't know why a SME isn't telling their AE, like, look, Holmes, you've been on 8 calls with me. You know what the first 4 questions are. Why don't you do that? And when it gets technical, bring me in. Because what tends to happen to SMEs is you get run all over the place with reps trying to help you present something so that they can create an opportunity that's not even qualified. And they're hoping that your work creates the opportunity, and it should be their work that creates that opportunity.
So, like, I can't disagree with anything you said. Yeah.
Well, you can if you want to.
No,
I'm okay.
I really cannot. Like, I find account managers try hard, but at least in my domain, and in the networking domain in general, there's way too much stuff that the SME knows, and that the account manager would have to know at some point, and it just takes them a long, long time. And at some point, they give up, and they just, why should I learn that when I have this guy in my back pocket ready to?
Right.
So how do
That's
we
right.
overcome that? Other than the SE, like, it should be a management thing, in my opinion. I don't know what you think. I'd love to know what you think, actually.
I do. I definitely think that every problem that an organization has is the leader's problem. And if the leader wants to do something about it, the leader has to demand that my account managers and account executives are subject matter experts to the level of what I call 52%. I call them a 52, like a little bit better than half. Like, you're not as good as having Ramsey there, but you're 50% as good. And then when it's qualified, then bring in my technical people and let them do the best work that they're capable of. But yeah, leadership should be driving that, because no one else has the authority to make that kind of shift. So you need a leader to step in and do that. But I think that's part of it. The other thing is you could teach your AE yourself to say, look, I want to teach you the first and second level questions so you look like a value creator. And then when it gets super nerdy, let me come in and nerd out with them, and we'll do our best work here. But I want to make sure you look like you know all this stuff, because they're looking at that person like, why are you a passenger in this car? Like, you don't know anything, you have nothing to offer. You only need 2 things to be a trusted advisor: trust and advice. And so that person's sitting there and they have no advice. So you're irrelevant at best, and a nuisance at worst. Why do I need you?
Okay. Lots to think about. So, all right. And when you say leader, you're talking about like upper management, or because you gave an example earlier, like if I told my sales guy we need to do this, then I'm the leader. Are you talking about that leader or management leadership?
Well, anybody's allowed to be a leader when they decide to lead, but I'm talking about, for an organization, there's somebody who has the title of leader in some level, who's responsible for and accountable for a set of results. That person has to change the behaviors, because they're the one that's been given the responsibility and the authority to do both of those things. So that person should be doing it, or those people. If it's a sales management team, they should be making sure that they're behaving in a way that their people are behaving in a way that best serves the client.
So, and the only way for them to know that is either they hang out with the salesperson for a long time, or someone gets them that information. And I think that's where it's missing.
Sure. And I think that if it's a sales leader, they should be on calls with their people because you're going to get to see things and then you understand how things work. And in the military, this concept's called the ground truth. The people at the back doing strategy aren't close enough to the problem to see the same thing that you see when you're actually in the middle of a fight. And so those people tend to have a different and a better view because they're right up where the action is.
Okay, sounds good. And so part of the discussion that we talked about is like how SEs and account managers can work together, but we also discussed about like maybe how we can find ways as a team to sell at different levels within the within a customer's company. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? Or...
When you say at different levels, are you talking about formal hierarchical levels, like someone's role in a company?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I use a structure that I call level 4 value creation, which means there's a value in product, there's a value in being easy to do business with, there's a value in tangible results, and there's a value in having strategic outcomes. So that's the way that I tend to frame this. So stakeholders and people who are going to use your product, they care deeply that the product works. So they care about level 1 value. And then ancillary stakeholders, the people who maybe don't use it, but accounting and IT and other people that are going to have to work with you, they care deeply that you're easy to do business with. Management tends to care about results, and then leadership tends to care about strategic outcomes. And so different groups of people need to be able to handle different things. So if I'm a technical user, I want to talk to a SME because I need to know that this is going to work for me. And I need to know technologically that it's going to work for me. And I'm thinking about, I'm going to buy a part from you and I'm going to integrate it. And you're going to develop a set of specs for me that are going to meet the technical specifications of what I'm building. We're going to have a lot of conversations because I care about that. And the people in executive management care that the product works and creates a competitive advantage so they can sell more of it and grow market share. So different groups of people tend to be responsible for selling different outcomes. And a technical user tends to serve level 1 and 2, and an account executive or an account manager or someone who's a pure salesperson is responsible tend to be for levels 3 and 4, and specifically 4. And what happens is when that person decides to lean on the technical person to have an executive level conversation and show somebody a demo, people stop showing up for your demo, and they stop showing up because they look at it and go like, this is not strategic value, this is bits and bytes and pieces and parts, and I don't care about that. I'm trying to accomplish the strategic outcome, speed to market. And you're not showing me speed to market, you're showing me a demo, or you're talking to me about technical specs. I don't care. So you have to serve the person that's there. And one of the reasons that we're going through this sort of Taylorism right now, where we're slicing roles thinner and thinner all the time, is because we're trying to have people create the right level of value for the right stakeholders.
Okay, so the way I see it right now, there are two kind of obstacles that people have to overcome, or at least account managers have to overcome. One, how to get to be able to talk to the executives, and 2, how to get them to come to demos where we are actually showing them how we could serve their strategic values.
Number 1, to get someone to agree to a meeting, you have to trade them more value in what they get out of the meeting than they give you in time. And that is universally true. When someone says no to a meeting, what they're saying is, what you just promised me wasn't enough for me to say yes to the meeting request that you just made. So if you can't tell me about the strategic outcomes you're going to generate and how you're going to generate and why it's important to me and why I should be doing something different, I'm not showing up to your meeting. And then if you think you have to have an executive leader in a demo, I'm going to guess you're probably wrong. And I'm going to say something like, Ramsey, listen, I know you're responsible for this organization. I know this outcome is important to you. If it's all the same to you, what I'd like to do is meet with your technical users and the people on your team. I'd like to give them a demo, but I want to make sure that they understand the outcome that we're working towards based on our conversation. And I would like to ask for permission to come back to you and share with you the outcome of that and how we're going to help them get the outcomes that they need, because they're going to really need to understand the technology a lot more than you are. And I'm probably going to get a lot greater engagement with a person who could care less what the demo looks like, but cares more about what their people think about it. And I'm going to be better off controlling the process by saying, this is what we should do and how to do it, than leaving it to chance and hoping I can get an executive to come and spend an hour on something that they don't care about.
Okay, so if I can summarize, basically, the account manager, thank you. The account manager has to understand what is the why of the executive, and
True.
maybe give them some, instead of asking for them to come and meet, or just give them their time back, as if like we're doing them a favor. Give them the time back, and then focus on the engineers, and then come back with a summary for them.
So if I can't trust you to go to my people and help them do this thing and then report back to me, and if I have to be involved in all of this, you're already making the burden of change too high for me. Like I'm busy. If you can handle this for me, I need you. But if I have to be there every step of the way, including the demo, then I probably can't work with you, because I don't have time to do that. And I'm never, it's interesting. I came out of a business where I bought software for my company, and people would say, we want to give you a demo. And I'm like, why? And they'd say, because it's important for you to know how the software works. And I said, well, if it's important for me to know how the software works, I can't buy it, because I'm never going to open it. I'm never going to use the software. I'm not an end user. If my end users like it and they're happy with it, I can buy it. But if I have to open it for any reason, I'm not buying it, period. If there's something I have to do with the software, I don't want it, because it's not my job. I'm not in charge of executing this stuff. I'm the one responsible for strategy. I have a different set of outcomes than they do. And it's tough for people to understand that. They're like, yeah, but the leader needs to buy in. No, they need to buy into the outcome. They don't need to buy into how the software works or what the workflows are. The team needs to buy into that. So we tend to think that the executive is an executor. They're executing strategic outcomes. They're not executing the solutions that we sell. They have a team that does that.
May I play a little bit of a devil's advocate here?
For sure.
So
you can. It's your show, and it's more fun when you do that.
Okay, awesome, great. Well, it's your show because you're the guest. I do whatever you want, but thank you. So I've been taught, or at least I've learned, that when I demo, I don't demo how the product works, because that's considered training. And I'm not trying to train them. What I'm trying to do is show them how my product would solve their problem. Yep. So if the objective is to help the executive see all the information without actually having to do any clicking, then the demo is like 5 minutes, because I already have the information up there. Like, look, this is our product. You have all the information you need right here, right? Wouldn't that be considered a demo that's useful to the executive?
If the demo is a demonstration of, because this, then that, because we do it this way, I'm going to achieve this strategic outcome for you better, faster, and cheaper than anyone else on earth, yes. But if I have to turn the software on and show you how to execute any command, then it probably, for some of us, will be lost, because we really could care less. And I just want to know I'm going to get the outcome. You're trying to show me proof that it's true, and I'm hoping that the people underneath me that are working with you, my managers and my supervisors and the people that I entrusted to make these decisions, I hope they've seen the demo and understand how it works and agree that it's the right solution, so that I can say yes to it, and that I don't have to be the one to do it. Now, I will say you're right in a number of cases. There are some leaders who are technical leaders, and they probably want to see it themselves too. But if it's an executive who's not responsible for the execution, and the bigger the company more often, and the more that person has competing priorities, the less interested they tend to be in this kind of thing. Then I think when you start saying, let me show you this, they get, those of us that are like this tend to get lost on stuff like that.
So if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is know your audience.
Know your audience for sure. Okay. You could have, the CEO could be an engineer. And that might be the area where they really pride themselves into where they find the significance in the value that they create. So you could have outliers that say that, but let's say it's a pure executive and not an engineer. when engineers start talking, we tend to start thinking about something else.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I always enjoy seeing that glazed over look they have. It's like, I guess I'm doing something right. Putting it to right to sleep.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You're like, listen, if you don't buy this, I'll keep talking.
Yeah. Well, actually, yeah. My old sales guy used to use my size as a threat.
Yeah.
Jokingly, obviously, but never worked. I guess people have security. All right, so based on that, we just talked about a lot of things, like different ways of doing stuff. How do you find the best method to do stuff, like to sell or to demo or what to cold call? How do you find the best way to do it?
I mean, I think the best way to do anything is to try to create value for the other party. So if I'm cold calling, I'm going to have a theory about why I'm calling. I'm going to have something that I want from them that I'm going to ask for very specifically and directly, and I'm going to trade something of so much value that I give them a good opportunity to say yes to that. How to have a meeting. I'm going to have an agenda. I'm going to get agreement on an agenda, and I'm going to make sure that whether this group of people buy from me or don't buy from me at the end of it, that they're better than they were before they had that meeting. I mean, they're going to say, like, wow, even if I don't buy from them, I'm definitely smarter. I definitely have new ideas I didn't have before. I have a better idea of what's coming in the future and what I need to do about it. I mean, and that is the way that I think about things generally, is that how do I create value for the other person that they would literally pay for? They should say, like, I would have paid for that. I mean, I learned so much. I'm now better off making these decisions and this decision. But that's the price of being a trusted advisor. It's trust plus advice. And if you don't have the advice and you don't have opinions and views and values, it's hard to be relevant to people.
So you mentioned something here, testing theories.
Yeah, I tend to believe that you should have a theory. Like if I'm going to call you and say, Ramsey, listen, I want to talk to you and I want to ask you for a 30-minute meeting where I can give you an executive briefing. And the reason that I believe this is interesting to you is because right now I know you're trying to find role clarity between your subject matter experts and technical people and your account managers. And I think I have a structure that I could show you. And listen, even if you never buy from me, the structure is going to allow you to make some different decisions about what you expect from your sales team. What do you look like Thursday for a 20-minute executive briefing? And I'm going to leave you with a deck and some questions and some ideas about what you might do with your team, even if we don't do anything in the future. Like that. I mean, that's it. I have something. I have a theory that you're struggling to figure out where the lines are between what a rep should be doing and what a sales engineer should be doing. That's just a theory. It could be wrong, but I don't think it is. So I have a theory about it. And you have to look for clues that tell you these tend to be generally true and these tend to be other things that people are challenged with. So you have some reason to call that says, I have something that will serve you. So what is that?
So are you basing that theory on other experiences you've had, or is there another way that you can come up with a theory?
There's lots of ways that you can come up with a theory. You can read the annual report of the companies you're calling on. You can talk to very low-level stakeholders that will tell you what's broken. You can look at your experience across a large number of clients to decide that this is a general trend we see that needs to be addressed. You're going to use all of your knowledge, all of your experience, all of your insight to have some informed point of view that gives you a theory.
Okay. So it's not like, because we hear a lot of complaints from customers that salespeople just call them and just go with a pitch that they have, a canned pitch. And so it's good. You basically have to do research before calling anybody. It's not one size fits all for everybody.
Yeah, and everything is research, right? The 5 customers that you met with in the last week, that's all research. I mean, you're knowing things that are happening to other people, how people are viewing things, how they're describing the problem, what they think they're challenged with, where they wish they had help. You're getting new information and insight all the time if you're paying attention.
So how do you like remember all that?
I don't. David Allen, who wrote the book Getting Things Done, has a belief that your mind is for thinking, not for remembering things. So I try not to remember them. I just type them into Evernote. So I have a series of notes I can go back and look at. when I decide to think. And you can't remember them all. So you write them all down and then you try to organize them over time. Over time, as you do the organizing and you're paying attention and writing them down, you start to know them. You start to have them memorized just because you've done the work.
So do you follow the GTD method?
Very, very, very modified version of it, but yes.
Okay. All right. You're the
I haven't.
second person or third person to talk to me about. I've read the book, but my excuse is I have a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old, so I haven't had.
It took me 3 reads before I could execute it at all. I mean, it made no sense to me at all, and there are big parts of it that I still struggle with, like keeping a giant list of everything that you ever want to do. For me, I have diminishing value in just having lists of things, and there's only a few important things that you need to do each day, and doing what's most important is a more critical way to think about it for me, having done GTD for a lot of years.
Okay, so I'm basically one read away from implementing it. Good to know.
I think so, yeah. And then when I implemented it, I immediately fell off the horse, 10 times in a row, and then I figured it out.
Have you read The One Thing?
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds very similar to what you were saying, like the priority.
Yeah, it's good to, and I would even go a level above them, to be honest with you. So I mean, it's more like what is purposeful, meaningful, all that stuff. So it's really a values-based decision.
Okay. All right. I think we went off on a tangent. I appreciate that. So I'll read GTD for the third time and hopefully implement it within the next couple of years.
And then fall off and then decide to try again.
Well, everything's like that. Everyone gets on a diet and he falls off and then tries to get back on, falls off. And
that's right.
The whole point is trying to keep
this will
going.
Be the same.
Yeah.
This will be the same for you.
Good to know. So one big topic that we always have, almost everybody in this industry, in this world, has competitors. And a lot of times, for one reason or another, the competitor is entrenched in one customer you're trying to break into. Or just you're going head-to-head in a competition. Is there a method or a best way to displace a competitor in your mind?
I wrote a book called Eat Their Lunch, which will come out October 30th, with that very topic as the subject of the book. And yeah, I think it starts with understanding that there's nothing you can do about your competitor. They're going to sell at a lower price. They're going to be inferior, but still pretend they're, superior in their solution. The only thing that you can do is decide to be a greater value creator, which means I can be more strategic, I can be more helpful, I can drive better results, and focus on yourself. But to do that, you really have to start with the advice part of trusted advisor, and you have to start capturing mind share. So to displace them, your competitor, if you imagine, they have a lens up in front of your client, your dream client's eyes, and they're controlling their view of things. I start by chipping away and giving them a new lens to look through. And then when I can get inside the building, and I'll come in anywhere, I'll come in at an end user stakeholder. Doesn't matter where I come in. I'm going to find somebody that lets me in the building. And then I'm going to start finding my way to get to have multiple conversations with multiple stakeholders about why change and how to change. And if the customer was working with someone who was already focused on helping them grow to the next level, what I would be doing wouldn't be subversive or disruptive. But it's subversive and disruptive because people get complacent and they're not working hard to create new value. So when you don't create new value, I'm going to come in and create new value behind you, and then I'm going to start working on that displacement. So that book is called Eat Their Lunch, and it comes out in end of October 30th now, and it's basically my structure for how you do that, because I think it's critical. If you want to grow, you're likely going to have to take big accounts away from your big competitors.
And where can people get that book?
You can get it right now on Amazon.com. It's on pre-order.
Okay.
And then if you email me your receipt, we'll send you a workbook.
Awesome. So everybody do that. So if I follow up on this, the one problem I see, and it's that everybody wants to get the sale now, right?
Yeah.
And what you're saying seems like it's going to take some time. It's not going to happen overnight. You're being an advisor.
It's going to take time whether you want it to or not. I mean, so that's the thing. So if it's going to take time whether you want it to or not, there's a Chinese saying, the best time to plant a tree was 100 years ago. If you wanted shade, you should have planted a tree 100 years ago. The second best time is right now. And so even if it is going to take time, you still have to do it. So the best time to start was 5 years ago, and the second best time is right now. And you know what? You never know where anybody's at. Some people are more along the path of being open to change than you think they are, and some of them will come quickly, and some of them will take you a year. I've worked on accounts personally that it took me 7 years, but in 7 years, within 2 weeks of a stakeholder that had locked me out for 7 years, leaving the company, I was doing $2 million a year with that client. And, I was calling on people anyway. I'm already prospecting. Why wouldn't I just stay the course with that one too?
So
I get this. I get the question all the time, like, when do you give up? And I'm like, I never give up. Why would I give up? Harvey McKay in his book, Swim with the Sharks, told a story about asking a veteran salesperson that. And the veteran salesperson said to him, they die or you die. And I've always thought that's the right answer. You just keep after it.
but if they die, don't you just go after their successor?
I thought the person that with the seven that kept me out for 7 years, I thought she was going to have to die before I would win the business, but she just needed to get a new job. And as soon as she got a new job, I was in.
Nice. Okay, good.
I'm glad she didn't die. I mean,
Yeah, no, nobody hopes anybody dies.
no, I was, but I was also very glad that she left.
Yeah, well, that's credit to you that you kept following up with that group or that company versus just giving up and moving on. Because that's what a lot of people end up doing, and
They give up.
Well, they don't see it as giving up, and I'm not talking about they as in, I'm part of them. I see it as trying to use my resources to the best of my abilities and focus on people who would buy from me. But then again,
That's right.
I'm the SE, not the account manager, so it's kind of a different idea.
So you think about a continuum of I spend $1 a year on what you sell, or I spend $2 million a year on what you sell.
Yeah.
The $1 person will never hear from me again, and the $2 million a year will hear from me quite constantly for a long period of time. It's again value decision.
Yeah.
Who's a strategic client that I can help that I should really be pursuing, and who should I stop wasting time with?
Okay. So it's not that you give up. You just make a conscious decision to go after higher value customers.
Right. That's exactly right.
Okay. Awesome. We're 41 minutes into this, and I appreciate you. I feel like I'm enjoying this conversation a lot, and I feel like I should be paying you for your time. So let's move on to the not so fire round, if that's okay with you.
Okay. And my people will send you a bill as soon as we're done.
You don't know my address, so I'm okay.
We can find you. We have our ways.
Okay, well, I'll move. Okay. All right, sounds good. Ouch. All right, so other than a notebook and a pen, is there an essential tool anybody in sales should be using?
The telephone. I mean, the telephone is still the most important tool that you should ever use. It's the fastest way to reach someone. It is asynchronous or synchronous rather communication tool instead of asynchronous. Like in an email, I send an email and then I wait for you to get it, and you could take 3 days to get back. When I get somebody on the phone, I can talk to them, so I can try to explain the value that I want to create. The phone is still the most important tool a rep can have.
And what about a sales engineer? Would the phone be still as important?
I mean, I think the most important thing for a sales engineer to have would be a personality. So if you want the tool, you've already got the expertise. So of the subject matter expertise, you've got that part. I think if I could give you a tool, it would be like maybe take an improv class, be able to be a little bit more entertaining and fun for people to be with. If you have a personality and a sense of humor, you make it a lot more fun for people. You know what they say about the extroverted engineer, right?
No, I've never heard of it.
An extroverted engineer looks at your shoes when they talk to you instead of looking at their own.
Okay.
So that's it. So if you can be playful and make it more fun for a fun experience, if you think about how do I make this fun for them? And even if you don't have a sense of humor, if you pretend like what you said is funny, it's funny that you think you're funny, and we'll like that too.
Yeah, that'll bring people's like defenses down. I guess.
Of course,
Yeah.
especially self-deprecating humor.
Yeah.
You know what? I just gave you probably the opening line. If you're an introverted engineer, to just even start out by, I'm an extroverted engineer, and here's how you're going to be able to tell. Instead of staring at my shoes when I talk to you, I'm going to be staring at yours. You've probably broken the ice in a way that gets you huge points from that point forward.
Yeah. No, I will definitely use that.
Let me know how that works.
We'll do.
I think you'll get a good laugh out of it right out of the gate.
Yeah. I'm gonna try to let you know. So you have a few books, from what I recall.
Three.
3 books. Is there which book would you recommend people start with?
I would tell you my recommendation is that you buy a dozen of each of them and then you just rotate them. But I guess that's probably not practical. The first book, I'll give you a view of each of the 3 books and people can decide for themselves. The first book is called The Only Sales Guide You'll Ever Need, and it's what's called a competency model. So the first 9 chapters are about the mindset that you have to be in to be a successful salesperson now. So it's the character traits and disciplines and things that make you somebody worth buying from. And then the second half of the book is skills like prospecting, negotiating, business acumen, change management, leadership, those kinds of things. That's the first book, and it's a really, really good book for all of the fundamentals, and it's fun, and it's a good read. The second book is called The Lost Art of Closing, and that's how you manage the sales process when the sales process is nonlinear, which means it doesn't go from point A to point B very smoothly. It goes from A to B to D to F back to B, and it's a different time for us now, and things are not linear anymore, even if we want them to be. And it's how you have these 10 difficult conversations around how do I get time? How do I help people explore change? How do I get them to commit to doing something different? How do I get them to collaborate with me? And so this is very, very driven by the language and the dialogue that's in the book, along with the theories. And then the third book, Eat Their Lunch, will come out October 30th. And that's just strictly how do you execute a competitive displacement and take business away from your competitors.
Okay, so now that people know what they are, they can choose which one they want to start with.
Yeah, and really it's like one big book, but you can't write a 400-page book and have a publisher buy it. So the difference, I could pull a chapter out of any one of these books and put it in another book, and it would still make sense to you. So the difference between them is the first part makes you somebody worth buying from. The second part makes you the advisor part of a trusted advisor, and the third part is execute all this now and displace people.
Okay, and is there a book that you haven't written that you would recommend to people?
Yeah, but it's hard to make a recommendation to everyone.
How about someone who's just breaking into sales?
Just breaking into sales. Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blunt is a good one if you're going to be in opportunity creation and capture. That's a good book. Or New Sales Simplified by Mike Weinberg. Or High Profit Prospecting by Mark Hunter.
I'm just writing them down. Okay. Great. So people have a lot to read.
Oh, yeah. Lots to learn.
Yep. Always. So we talked about time management a little bit. At least we talked about the GTD. Is there a tip or trick that you would give account managers or sales engineers for time management and task organization?
The best advice I can give you if you want to be truly productive is to write down the 3 most important things you need to do each day and block 90 minutes to do each one of those things. You'll find out it doesn't take you 90 minutes to do the most important things, but if you give yourself about half the day of really focused work and decide what the 3 biggest, most impactful outcomes you need to generate are, you'll be super productive.
And do you generally block that time beginning of the day, end of the day, or which part of the week as well?
I tend to do my first block at 5 o'clock in the morning while everybody's asleep. I do 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. And then I'm allowed to be reactive after that and serve other people as long as I can have 90 minutes twice a day in the workday to get my work done. That's focus work. And then I steal that third one by doing it when no one else wants my time.
Okay. Cool. So you're doing three 90-minute blocks a day.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. Is there an advice you would give a sales engineer or an account manager, if you'd like, that you feel they don't get from anyone?
That they don't get from anyone. So you want something that no one else will tell you.
Or very, very rarely they would tell me.
I'll tell you what I would tell everybody. And regardless of your role, decide what it is you want. And by that, I mean, sit down and think, what do I want? What do I want for my life? What do I want? What gives me purpose and meaning? What am I going to do with this time I've been given? So I've been given this time on this planet, and I have to decide what I want to do with it. And we drift and we go from one thing to the next thing, and we let the world move us like we're a log on a river. And you have to go against the current and decide what it is you want and then do that.
Perfect. So that reminds me of a book called The 52 Habits of Highly Successful People, I think. Or 50,
I don't know that
52 Success Principles.
I would tell you the book that I would recommend in that case is Seth Godin's What to Do When It's Your Turn, and It's Always Your Turn.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So where can people find out more about you?
thesalesblog.com. That's the best place to go. I publish there every day. And then when they go there, they should sign up for the Sunday newsletter. It's my best work. Gets delivered on Sunday morning, so you can get to work with a big idea on Monday.
Awesome. That's perfect. That's all the questions that I have for you today. Thank you, Anthony.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Take care. Thank you, Anthony, for your time today. Anthony said so many things that struck a chord with me today, and mainly about the leadership thing. Like, as SEs, we generally look for the account managers for leadership as our leaders because they own the quota, they own the responsibility and the risk and all that. But it doesn't really matter who is the official leader, if you will. But it's who takes the leadership roles, who starts asking the leadership questions. So that was good. Like, I took that from Anthony and I really enjoyed it. So the surprise that I mentioned at the start of the show, Anthony has written a few books which he talked about during the podcast. And after we stopped recording, he offered to give my listeners one book or more. I'm not even sure what he is, but if you want a chance to win the book, then there's a few things that you might need to do. One, to be eligible to win, you have to have subscribed to my newsletter. So go on my website, wetheSalesEngineers.com/any-show, or even the front page, and register to the newsletter. That's how I can contact you to let you know who won, and also let you know about webinars and any other news that's out there. And two, I usually post these podcasts on LinkedIn or Twitter. So you can earn points by going on these platforms and sharing this interview. And with the share, I don't want you to just share it for no good reason. I would like for you guys to include one thing that you enjoyed out about my conversation with Anthony. It could be something that he said that struck with you or something that I said. And the more you share on those platforms, the more points you get. Obviously, tag me so I know. And the better chances are you get for winning. Again, I don't know what you're winning, but winning is fun. So you can find me on LinkedIn at We The Sales Engineers. And on Twitter, my handle is at We The SEs. And if you share the same thing on both platforms, you get 2 points. And I'll declare the winner and hopefully the prize on next week's podcast. So I think that's enough of me talking for today. Thank you guys for listening again. Thank you, Anthony, for being here. And with that, this is Ramsey signing off.